And welcome back to the Wellness Paradox podcast. I'm so grateful that you can join us on this journey towards greater human flourishing. As always, I'm your host, Michael Stack, an exercise physiologist by training and a health educator and a health entrepreneur by trade. And I'm fascinated by a phenomena I call the wellness paradox. This paradox, as I view it, is the trust, interaction, and communication gap that exists between fitness professionals and our medical community. This podcast is all about closing off that gap by disseminating the latest, most evidence-based, and most engaging information in the health sciences. And to do that in episode 81, we're joined by Irene Pluim-Mentz. And Irene is a physical therapist by trade and training, but this conversation is going to be around water exercise, which I know you think might sound like an interesting, almost odd topic for conversation for the wellness paradox, but as we're all well aware, this is about exposing fitness professionals to opportunities to expand their careers and expand the impact that they can make on people. And certainly water-based exercise, as Irene will touch on in the podcast, is something that is a very viable yet underutilized modality. And we're not only going to talk about its benefits, but also how it can be implemented and operationalized within an overall fitness or post-rehab program. I think you're going to find this conversation very illuminating, largely because it's probably not something you've thought very deeply on as an exercise modality. There's going to be a lot of great information that Irene gives us for the show notes page, so please make sure you check that out at wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 81. Please enjoy this conversation with Irene Pluim-Mentz. Today, we're delighted to be joined by Irene Pluim-Mentz. Irene, thank you so much for joining us.
I am very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me, Mike.
Yeah, this is going to be a neat conversation. You and I met in Chicago at an SCW event that we were both speaking at, and you told me a little bit about what you do and Aquaome, and I said, I've always wanted to have a conversation around water exercise on the podcast, but I didn't know anyone that did water exercise that would want to be on the podcast. And then we started talking. So we're going to dive into that, but talk a little bit more just about your background in general, and then we'll get into Aquaome and water exercise.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I am born and raised in the Netherlands, hence the accent. Mm-hmm. I did my professional education as physical therapist in the Netherlands and then moved to the United States. I have had a passion for water activity all my life. I have been a water polo player myself, and I wanted to start some water polo here in New Mexico, and that was very hard. But with physical therapy as my professional background, I started doing a lot of aquatic therapy, which is different from hydrotherapy, and we will come into that as well later. But aquatic therapy really made such a difference for me. I was just lacking some equipment, and therefore I developed the Aquaome. I have been a PT for over 30 years now, and an aquatic exercise therapist for probably about 25 of those 30.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and I love how, sometimes, necessity is the handmaid of invention, as they say. Like you didn't have a tool that you needed, and so you invented it yourself. So let's just briefly talk a little bit about Aquaome. I'm sure it's going to make its way into our conversation at certain points, but what was the need that you saw, and then what did you develop?
So the need that I saw was more adjustable drag resistance equipment for water. Yeah. There is great drag resistance equipment out there, but none of it is as adjustable as I needed it. Since I work with elderly and people with arthritis and people with cerebral palsy and autism, I really needed something that I could use for all of them. The Aquaome is a band of non-permeable equipment material that can be folded and adjusted in different sizes, can be used for arm and leg exercises, and it is truly fully adjustable. And it took me years to come up with that idea. I have tried all kinds of different things. I have almost every other piece of drag resistance equipment that is out there, but none of them worked as well as finally the Aquaome has.
Awesome. And I remember asking you a little bit of this when we were in Chicago, but I'll ask it again for the benefit of our audience. You're not an engineer or anything like
Not
that,
at all.
right? Like, so I'm just curious, just briefly, and then we'll get into the rest of the discussion. How did you learn how to develop something like this? Like, well, that's just a very interesting entrepreneurial story.
Well, because I am so involved in hydrodynamics, I really could use all that knowledge in thinking of, okay, if I have this piece of material or this piece of equipment, what will it do for me? So this actually came in the same year as another great instructor came out with a towel workout. She used a towel to get pretty much the same benefit, although it wasn't as adjustable.
Yeah.
And then I played around with prototypes. I had 5 different prototypes.
Awesome.
Before I came up with the final design.
Yeah, very cool. And for those of us that are listening to this on the podcast, they can't see behind you where you do have the pictures of the Aquaome, but certainly we'll link to it on the website so you have a chance to see it. But yeah, I really want this conversation to be around water-based exercise in general, because although it's decently prevalent in the the physical therapy community, it also has existed kind of in the I see, again, for those of you that are listening, you can't see Irene's face. It's prevalent where there are warm water therapy pools to be able to do these things, which it certainly isn't everywhere. And you see this exist in the fitness industry in kind of the water aerobics class, which that's also not what we're talking about here. So let's just level set by talking about the benefits of water-based exercise. Certainly there's the rehabilitative benefit that you do, but there's also a broader fitness.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So the broader benefit is that it is an adjustable medium for everybody. You can easily adjust resistance levels when you're in the water. It is a safe medium when people have balance issues, because when they fall, they don't fall hard. It gives extra resistance because of the adhesive nature of water molecules. The extra pressure of the hydrostatic pressure on your body helps with muscle soreness afterwards. It helps actually with renal activity and hormonal balancing as well. There's so many benefits, too many to actually mention all right now. The most important benefit related to fitness is the additional muscle activity that is needed to move through water. And it is 3-dimensional. So unlike exercising on land, where we have gravity pushing down on us, when you're in the water, you have 3-dimensional resistance, but also that unloading, taking the gravity away and having that freeing feeling of buoyancy.
Yeah. And when you start to think about the properties of water, all of that makes a lot of sense. I think, again, a lot of fitness professionals don't necessarily go to thinking of it, right away in the sense of the modality you're talking about. I think, again, fitness professionals picture the water aerobics class versus,
which is absolutely an image we want to get away with. We want to go away from, I would say. Aqua aerobics gives a certain picture of these elderly women in the water, having almost like a tea party, talking to each other, and just moving around a little bit. We are really talking about water fitness, aquatic exercise, where you can work on gaining muscle mass, where you can work on burning calories, where you can work on balance and other activities that are needed for daily living skills.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, very analogous to the exercise that you would do that is land-based, except in this fluid medium. So help the fitness professional that's listening understand, I mean, just broadly speaking, indications, contraindications, like who would you want to be looking to do this with? Who might you want to be cautious of doing this with? I'm kind of looking to put some guardrails around this for our professionals to think about.
Right. So the only true contraindication would be open wounds.
Got it.
But then you have some contraindications of fear for water. Obviously, that would not be the best person to take into the water. There would be somebody with uncontrolled hypertension. You might not want to take that person into the water without clearance from their physician either. Those are actually the main, of course, temporary contraindications like being sick and having diarrhea. You don't want to be in the water until 2 weeks after clearing all of that. But other than that, there actually aren't that many contraindications. And that is the beauty of it as well. While on land, when you have a very obese person, it might not always work. You can take that person into the water and have the best benefits ever, and then work their way up towards land exercise.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. And so would you say that type of individual that has, a very hard time load bearing just because of the compressive stresses of their weight, do you think that as a fitness professional would look at it, do you think that's one of the more ideal populations to be working with in the water, or are there other ones that you would encourage fitness professionals to consider?
I would consider everybody. I would consider the professional athletes to do some cross training to unload those joints as well. Think about a football player and all the pressure they have on their joints when they do their tackles, when they catch those balls, everything. They can do water running and have some extra unloading in the water. Yeah, definitely not only the obese person, but anybody. A person with fibromyalgia, they do great in medium cool water because the hydrostatic pressure will help with their muscle pain, while the fluidity of the water can help them move their body more freely than on land.
Yeah. And you see this quite frequently with athletes where, they'll be running in a pool, and it could be, as a active recovery session, or it could be, rehabilitatively. So it's an interesting, way to think of it. I think, even my mind, as someone who's not experienced in this arena, goes to, a very narrow population that would be working with it. And honestly, Irene, I think it comes a lot from my years at the commercial health clubs of seeing the water aerobics class. So I think it's breaking that paradigm a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's get very practical here. And this is the part of this conversation I'm kind of most interested to have with you, is what a fitness professional should be considering in terms of best practices or, kind of program design principles for water exercise, because it's definitely it's nuanced and it's different than land-based exercise.
Yes, but it's just as nuanced as land-based exercise should be as well.
Yes.
So best practices would be go into the water yourself, experience it yourself, see how much force you can handle in the water, how much exhaustion you actually can create in the water. Wear your iWatch or whatever you want to wear and see the amount of calories you actually use while doing water exercise. You can do a regular EMOM, you can do an MREP, you can do all of that in the water as well. But you have to be familiar with the hydrodynamic principles. You do need to know that plyometrics in the pool is different. You do need to know that when you use certain equipment in the pool, it responds differently than when you would use that kind of equipment on land. So you have to experience that self. Really, the best based practice would be take a class in aquatic exercise. Go to aeawave.org or to jennylinfitness.com and figure out their programs to help land-based instructors to become water instructors. It is a different mindset that you need to have. You need to realize that gravity is pushing down, buoyancy is pushing up, all those kind of things. And you need to learn that. And the only way to really learn that is by experience. Get it in it yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I liken it to, we have a lot of interns that work for my organization, and the interns that have never lifted weights before we can really teach them anything, we just have to say, hey, you need to start a weightlifting program on your own. Just be kinesthetically aware enough to be able to do a squat before you start teaching somebody else. So walk us through a little bit, just generally speaking, about how you think about programming somebody for, a water-based routine. So I'll put some context around this. I think of prescribing a strength training program. I'm thinking of, okay, I'm going to do, my squats first, and I'm going to do leg curl second. I'm going to do back rows third. I'm going to do sets. I'm going to do reps. How are you thinking about the prescription paradigm in the water? Is it similar? Is it different? If so, how?
Very similar.
Okay.
Very similar, especially if you work with that kind of population that does it as an addition to their land-based programming. As a therapist, of course, I also do all kinds of other approaches that are more geared towards mobility, that are more geared towards integration of sensory aspects. But if you have a fitness person that comes in for their fitness, you do the exact same thing. You do timed or amount of repetitions, and you play with the amount of speed and with the range of motion that you use to get those same benefits.
Yeah, so stay with that for a second, because I just want to make sure that our professionals that are listening are clear on this. It sounds like the way you're saying you modify the resistance underwater is a combination of like surface area and speed of movement, right? I mean, so say a little bit more about that.
Yes, definitely. So you can just walk through the water and be fine, right? That works for everybody. But now start running through the water, and you will feel that there's a tremendously increase in resistance level. Turbulence actually creates exponentially increase of resistance levels rather than just X times amount. So it's exponentially. Think about yourself standing in a river, and the water is just babbling by, and it is fine, and you can stand there easily. But further down the river, there are rocks in the river, and you see all those white foamy eddies and all of that turbulence there, and you go stand there, you suddenly can barely hold your balance. You can create that for yourself as well using the proper amount of the proper equipment by using that same, okay, I'm going to increase my speed a little bit. Now I have to work a little harder. Or, oh, that hurts my shoulder. I need to taper down a little bit and use a smaller surface area, or go a little slower and a little bit more controlled.
Yeah, and when
that's one of the things that you do need to be careful with in water because of the buoyancy. Postural alignment takes a little bit more effort. You have to think a little harder, and the cueing really needs to include postural alignment cueing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because it's a whole, you're maintaining posture in a very different medium than what you would be when you're on land. So I'm curious, when we're in the weight room, I'm just trying to make this analogous to what fitness professionals are used to, is you go over and you grab the 15-pound dumbbells, or you put the pin in the selectorized machine stack, and you're quantifying the load. How do you think about that in the water? Are you using like an RPE scale, or how are you gauging the intensity, I guess is what I'm saying?
Yes, the RPE is probably the most commonly used scale for that.
Okay.
We have some rubberized resistance equipment that will give us poundage, but none of the drag resistance does that, because it all depends on how fast the person is able to move it through the water. So it is all by perceived exertion rate. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Now, as far as the actual populations that you've worked with in the pool environment, are you, with the way your job is structured now, are you just doing rehab work, or are you using it for post-rehab to transition into a standard exercise program? How are you using it right now in your practice? Is it just rehabilitative?
No, it's definitely not. I also teach a regular water fitness class at the community college here in town. So I do everything that is involving water. I would be teaching water polo if I could. Most people that I see at the moment is either developmental work, neurologic, and some post-rehab.
Got it. Got it. Tell me more about your water fitness class. I'm curious about this because it's very clear from our conversation. It is not the traditional water aerobics that we think of. So to the whatever extent you could paint the picture of that for our audience, do so.
So this past week, I have used EMOMs and MREPs in the pool with that class, and it is actually a warm water exercise class. So my population is, I would say, 65 and up in that class, in that group of people. The majority are women. I have a few men. I focus a lot on functionality. So when I have them do a tricep extension, I tell them, push yourself out of the chair as much as possible. We do tuck jumps that they otherwise would not be able to do on land.
Right.
We do high rate 40 seconds cross countries, just going at it to get that heart rate up, to burn some energy. I use the equipment that I have, whether it be the Aquaom or whether it be the aquatic dumbbells that we have, which are buoyant. And then we come into postural alignment even more because people have a hard time controlling those. Yeah. I use any kind of equipment we have, not every time. I usually do use music as background motivator. I'm not choreographing to the music.
I'd like to take a quick break from today's episode to tell you more about one of our sponsors. As all of you are well aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has been absolutely devastating for the fitness industry, with upwards of 1/3 of our clubs closing nationally on a permanent basis. One of the few stabilizing forces during this very tumultuous period of time has been IHRSA, the Global Trade Association for the Health and Fitness Industry. On my crusade to make fitness professionals part of our healthcare continuum, the work that IHRSA is doing is absolutely vital. They provide advocacy and lobbying support at both the federal and the state level. They support state alliances in many ways, and they also provide resources and best practices to club owners, operators, and individual fitness professionals. Indeed, if we are truly going to become part of the healthcare continuum, we must speak with one unified voice. We must have best practices that we implement, and we must come together as an industry to ensure the public, the medical community, and lawmakers hear our message loud and clear, that movement is medicine and it is essential. That is the work that IHRSA is doing. They've recently revamped their membership structure, allowing large clubs, small clubs, boutiques, and individual professionals to join the organization for an appropriate price that allows them to have access to all of these many great resources and allows us to unify and amplify our voice as an industry. For more information on the amazing work that IHRSA is doing, go to their website, IHRSA.org. That's IHRSA.org, IHRSA.org, to look in a little bit further into the work IHRSA is doing to unify our industry, to move us closer to being a part of that healthcare continuum. Now back to today's episode. Right. You and me both with any exercise. So you mentioned equipment, and certainly you saw the need for this device, and you just mentioned there's dumbbells that you use, and I picture these from my days at the YMCA, the styrofoam-ish looking dumbbells.
Absolutely, yeah.
What other equipment is commonly used in the water?
So commonly used are the flotation dumbbells or barbells. We can use rubberized straps, just like we do as on land. We actually use some weights as well, regular lead weights. Mm-hmm. And then to me, it becomes more land-based exercise, just transferred to water.
Right.
Of course, drag resistance. For me, drag resistance is the ultimate water exercise equipment, just because it is made to be used in water. And there's you can't even use it on land. And so that's my preferred equipment type. But I will use buoyant equipment as well. We use noodles. Almost every pool now has those noodles. Kickboards can be used as well as an drag resistance device, but again, it has buoyancy, so it affects postural alignment a lot again as well. And then there's gloves, fabric gloves that you can put on your hands to also increase that frontal surface area. Cuffs, buoyant cuffs, they are two-way. They can be used to be in deep water and keep you afloat. But because of their bulkiness, they also give drag resistance.
Got it.
Those are the main types of equipment. And then for deep water, we have flotation belts and some other things that can be used to help you stay up in the water.
Got it. Yeah. And the reason I asked that question is because I can envision our professionals that listen to this podcast going, wow, I might want to give this a try because my club has a pool and maybe this could be something unique I offer, but they don't have an aqua ohm yet, or maybe they don't have anything as far as formal equipment, but the noodles and the kickboards. I think that's a very good point.
People have been using frisbees.
Oh.
And make sliders for when you have a shallow pool, you can use them as slider discs, or you can use them as a hand pedal and push them through the water. You can cut a milk jug open and create some extra resistance by pulling the milk jug through the water. There's other options as well.
Got it. So you have the opportunity to be creative.
Yes.
So you made mention of this earlier, and as we kind of, bring our discussion, kind of towards the close here, where are some great resources for people to go to learn more about this? I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier, but I'd like to make sure we really highlight that.
Yes. So the golden standard for really learning about water exercise would be the Aquatic Exercise Association.
Okay.
And their website is aeawave.org. Then we have scwfit.com. They also do water certifications where you can learn more about how to use all the hydrodynamic principles. JennyLynnFitness.com has SWET, which is structured water exercise training. And that is where we really go into getting away from this aquarobics, water aerobics style, but really taking it into training. And then if you want to go more into the realm of rehab and post-rehab, you have Aquatic Therapy and Rehab Institute, and that is atri.org. Those are the 4 places that I really would check out. And then, of course, Red Cross for lifeguarding and water safety skills and things like that.
Got it. Okay, and we'll link up to all those on the show notes page. And as an aside, you said lifeguarding. All of my friends that have facilities around the country that have lifeguards will tell you that there is a national lifeguard shortage right now. So if you're younger and you're looking for a job opportunity, I'd say lifeguarding would also be a good in-demand career right now.
Well, and actually every pool every pool operator that I've spoken to, every pool manager, we are in dire need of more aquatic instructors, whether it be one-on-one instructors or group instructors, group X instructors. We are in dire need of aquatic instructors.
Interesting. So this is a unique opportunity to connect in maybe a slightly different sector of the fitness industry.
Yes, absolutely. And if you already are an exercise instructor, Sweat, CERT, and JennyLynnFitness.com, they have a Turf to Surf 4-hour course that also gives you CEUs or CECs, whatever they're called in your guys' branches. They're all different in every branch.
Yeah. But
that will actually teach you about hydrodynamics and then as well as the structured water exercise training.
Awesome. That was Turf to Surf, you said.
Turf to Surf. Yes.
I love it. I get the metaphor. Where can people go if they want to find out more about you and Aqua?
Of course, my website, aqua-ohm.com, aquaohm.com. They can reach out through info@aquaohm.com. I have videos there. I have videos on YouTube channel as well. And I'm working on expanding all that. They also can look on my website and see where I will be live. My next live event will be in Boston coming up next weekend. It is an SCW Fit Mania, where I will be again. And I will be in, what's the next one? DC in February, I think, as well. If they're really into aquatics, then there is an aquatic pool operating in Colorado Springs, AOAP, where I will be as well, and I will be presenting there too.
Awesome.
And then for more equipment needs, there's indigoaquatics.com, and Indigo Aquatics and myself are working together and have created a liquid gym toolkit.
Oh.
And it has every tool in there that you need, including the AquaOhm for drag resistance, some buoyant equipment, and some stretch band equipment.
Oh, perfect. There we go. We love kits. We love the one-stop
exactly.
Yeah. I will. That's a lot of great information, and I appreciate that, and I know our audience does, because again, this is, I think, something people are going to be interested in, but we don't exactly know the resources to go to because it's a non-traditional modality in our field. So I will link up to all of those on the show notes page. So for everyone that's listening to this, go to the show notes page. It's wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 81. And I'll remind you on that on the outro as well. A lot of great resources there. Irene, this has been great. I wish I had a pool at my facility, but I don't, at least right now. But I think this is a great, unique opportunity. And it's a way for fitness professionals to differentiate themselves, because to your point, this is not something that is, it is in high demand because it's not something that is practiced very often in our field. So I think that this conversation has done exactly what I wanted it to do, which is enlighten fitness professionals of this opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. And I really would stress the benefit of aquatic exercise and taking everybody that you have available in there. If you are doing a post-rehab though, make sure that you connect with their rehab person.
Yes.
And make sure that you follow through on any precautions or anything else that they might have before you take them into the pool. And we will see an increase of use of pool times, just because of our graying population and people wanting to prevent injuries. So we have triathletes coming into the pool to do their run training. We have aqua bikes these days. We have aqua kickboxing. We have all kinds of other ways of training in the pool that will help prevent injury a little bit by taking it out of gravity into buoyancy.
That is an outstanding point. We know that the senior population, the aging population, is one of the most critical demographics, because they're going to be the largest with the most disposable income. And so this is just yet another opportunity to work with that demographic. And to your point, a medium that is very, very effective for them to operate in. So
absolutely. And think about, the fall risk issues, that if you are training with them on land compared to in water, if they fall in water, it's not a big deal. If they fall on land, you have incident reports and everything else that you have to do, including probably some injuries to the person as well. So yeah.
And this, again, like I said, framing this up as a great opportunity for the professionals. And before I let you go, I'm going to end the podcast with the final question that I always end the podcast on. And I very much enjoy asking this to people who are in the medical and allied health fields, because you provide a unique perspective. I consider the wellness paradox to be the gap in trust and communication that exists between fitness professionals and the medical community. And
I agree.
You kind of bridge both worlds a little bit. Yeah. So to that end, for the fitness professionals that are listening, what's one piece of advice you would give those fitness professionals to bridge that gap?
To really know scope of practice for each profession that you deal with. You as a fitness professional compared to the person that is referring a client to you, and really know your scope of practice. if you want to go beyond your scope of practice, take those classes, communicate with the other people that you deal with, whether they be in the medical field and you are in the fitness field. We are so close in knowledge, and there is such a great need for both of us. Let's become a little less rigid in how we put ourselves in boxes, and try to be a little bit more inclusive of the knowledge that fitness professionals have. And I have worked in a private club here in town, and I was amazed by the amount of fitness knowledge they had compared to my medical knowledge. And it bridges the functionality for a person, because fitness professionals look a little bit more at functionality, while as medical professionals, we tend to look a little bit more to, oh, but this is the norm and we have to function in that specific norm, which is not necessarily the truth. And so we need to be more all-inclusive towards each other in this field.
No, very, very, very well said. Irene, thank you so much for joining us on the Wellness Paradox.
You're very, very welcome. It's a pleasure to talk to you and to the listeners. If there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. If you found it insightful and informative, please share with your friends and colleagues. Those shares really do make a difference for us. As I said, there's a lot of great information on the show notes page from this episode that can be found at wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 81. Please be on the lookout for next week's episode when it drops on Wednesday. And don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcast platform. Until we chat again next week, please be well.